So health psychology is Division 38. The APA, the American Psychological Association, has a division for developmental psychology. It has one for educational psychology. Obviously, it has at least 38 because this is 38. It has one for religion. I think it's Division 42. Has one for multiculturalism and ethnicity. That's 37, I think. Anyway, they have all these divisions, and you can join them and get their journals if you like, which is kind of interesting. How many people are in Standing Courage's 290 class? Okay. You didn't understand the question he asked?
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
Okay. He wants to know how you feel about multiculturalism and what your philosophy of multiculturalism. So he wants to look up an article dealing with multiculturalism. Well, I just happen to have I have a bunch of multicultural journals in my office. So if you want to come by and pick up one.
That was last week, actually.
Oh, that was last week, okay. So what's this week? Something better?
It's talking about the 21st century
Okay,
and adolescence and the growth and development.
okay. All right, well, I'll have to read it to see what he's talking about. Okay, so Division 38 promotes public health policy and improvement of the healthcare system. That's what we're looking for. As we were talking before, there's a new virus out. We're so excited. It's killing people in China. It's in 37 countries, and now it's in the United States. So we're not behind everybody else. It's called Wuhan coronavirus is what it's called. The problem is that it gets into your lungs, and then you get a lower respiratory infection, which means it literally gets into your lungs. Then your lungs fill up with fluid and you die if they can't save you, if antibiotics or whatever they're trying to use on you don't work. Antibiotics should not work on viruses. Antibiotics are antibacterial medications, so they shouldn't really work on viruses. But forever we've been treating people with colds with antibiotics. I don't know why, I'm not exactly sure. Maybe the rationale was that maybe it'll develop into pneumonia. So we need to make sure you don't catch pneumonia by giving you antibiotics. Anyway, one of the things that it's done, it's made everybody insensitive to penicillin. Because once upon a time, penicillin was the strongest antibiotic we had. And we were giving that to everybody, including me. When I was a kid and I got sick, they'd give me a shot of penicillin. When I was in the service and guys came down with a clap, do you know what the clap is? Gonorrhea. We give them penicillin. That's the only way we had to knock it out. Until they came up with a strain of gonorrhea that was penicillin resistant. And then we had no way to knock it out. Okay. Health psychologists are very active in all facets of health. Oh, so we have this new coronavirus. The question is, Denise was saying that she thought it came from snakes. I read that it came from one of the civet cats. Civet cat is a raccoon-like creature that lives in Asia. And what they do, the Chinese, I told you the Chinese live with their livestock. Well, they also live with their wild animals, and they eat wild animals. It would be like if you go to a market, you can buy frogs, you can buy civet cats, you can buy pangolin, which is a huge rodent. You can buy rats, you can buy, and they eat all this meat because they don't have enough meat over there. They don't really raise livestock except for pigs. And of course, pigs have a very, very similar immune system to humans. So because of that, if you live with your pigs, then you start trading your diseases with the pig because their immune system is very similar to yours. So that's one of the reasons why the influenza always comes from Asia. That's one of the reasons why all of a sudden we have the Wuhan coronavirus coming into the United States, because they live and they eat all of these strange wild animals. Now in the United States, of course, we don't really eat wild animals like that. They have living wild animals that you take home and kill, and then you cook them up for food, and you eat them. And this is where the disease came from, the coronavirus, the Wuhan coronavirus. Wuhan is a province in China. Anyway, that's where it came from. I heard that it came from the civet cat. Denise heard that it came from some of the snakes, some of the amphibians. Amphibians are relatively foul. They have bacteria and viruses, and of course, that's where she heard that they came from. So I was watching a expose on YouTube, and they were showing all these animals that they were playing with, that they were eating. They had them in cages. Of course, they were all defecating, and well, that's put something in a cage, and after a while, it's got to go to the bathroom. So it does, so that their feces gets all over the place. If they're sick, nobody knows. How can you tell if a civet cat is sick? You can't, because you don't know what a sick civet cat looks like. So all of a sudden, now you've got the feces there, you've got the sick civet cat. Somebody buys it, takes it home, eats the thing, and gets the virus, whatever virus it had. But you've got its feces all over your floor. And of course, you clean it up the next day, but on that given day, anybody that came in contact with that feces, of course, got sick. Now we got a really serious problem. It's in 37 countries, and we'll see what happens with this stuff if it explodes, the civet cat. Yeah, it looks like a raccoon, doesn't it? It really does look like a raccoon.
Like a raccoon and a cat.
It's a raccoon and a cat mated with one another. I think it's a raccoon. It is in the raccoon family, if I'm not mistaken. But they call it the civet cat because it's long and slender like a cat. Okay. Anyway, okay, so one of the things that health psychologists do is that they look at health education. They consult frequently with government leaders who formulate public policy in an effort to improve the delivery of health care to all people in the United States. 20th century trends that shape health psychology. We've increased life expectancy in the United States because somebody cared. What else did we do? We look at lifestyle disorders, and there are a ton of lifestyle disorders. I learned yesterday, I read CNN exclusively, but CNN told me that Ozzy Osbourne has Parkinson's disease. I know that breaks everybody's heart. We have all of these rockers, these old rockers, these people that were making music and doing whatever they were doing back in the 70s, smoking whatever dope they were smoking, or dropping acid, or whatever they were just snorting cocaine. All these individuals are coming down with all kinds of strange things. Ozzy Osbourne has Parkinson's disease. Linda Ronstadt has a form of Parkinson's disease. And we know that Linda Ronstadt was snorted a lot of cocaine because she had to have her nose reconstructed twice. Okay. That's what happens to you when you snort cocaine. As much fun as that is. So all of these people are dying. Why are they dying? Because sex, drugs, and rock and roll. That was their lifestyle. The rock and roll probably didn't make them sick. The drugs probably did. That gave him Parkinson's disease. Who do we know that has Parkinson's disease who snorted a lot of cocaine? Oh yeah, Michael J. Fox. Young actor, cute little kid from Canada, comes down here, he's making all this money, he's making all these movies, everybody loves Michael J. Fox, snorting a lot of cocaine, next thing you know, he's got Parkinson's disease. Is that what happens when you snort a lot of cocaine? The answer is yes, that's exactly what happens to you when you snort a lot of cocaine. So does that mean you have to develop Parkinson's disease if you snort cocaine? And the answer is no. But if you do, then there you go. If you eat a lot of sugar, are you going to develop diabetes? Well, for some people, yes, and for some people, no. My family, there's no diabetes in my family. I eat lots and lots of sugar. I eat lots and lots of salt. But you guys are Native Americans, you're American Indians, you're indigenous peoples of the Americas. You're more sensitive to these things than my ancestry is. And this has to do with my genes, has to do with your genes. However, lifestyle, we're talking about lifestyle, right? Yeah, we're talking about lifestyle. I am a direct ancestor of John Adams. I'm also a direct ancestor of John Quincy Adams, who is the son of John Adams, so obviously, okay. Interesting, really interesting families. Each of them had 5 kids. John Adams had 5 children. John Quincy Adams, his wife had 5 children. Okay. And each of them had the same configuration, 3 boys and 2 girls. As curious as that is. Of the 3 boys, John Adams had 3 boys. Of the 3 boys, 2 of them were alcoholics and died young. And the other one was John Quincy Adams. Okay, so then John Quincy Adams has children. He has 3 boys and 2 girls. And the other thing about the girls, they were really bad pickers. They kept marrying men that were not good men. As a matter of fact, his oldest daughter married a man who kept borrowing money from John Adams and John Quincy Adams, and he lost it all. And then he committed suicide when she was pregnant. She was having a baby, and he went in and shot himself. As stupid as that sounds. Okay, so John Quincy Adams has 5 kids. 3 of them are boys. 2 of them are alcoholics and die young. And the other one is a functional individual that doesn't drink to excess, and he has no problem whatsoever. So I have alcoholism in my family, but I don't drink. However, if I did, there's a relatively large possibility that I would become an alcoholic because it's in my genes. So I don't drink for a couple different reasons. One reason is because it tastes like it doesn't taste good. It doesn't. I don't think it tastes good at all. And the other reason is because my mother was a nurse and she worked in the emergency room, and she used to tell us all these really wonderful stories about men coming in drunk and acting like jackasses. And I never wanted to be a jackass, especially in my mother's eyes. I didn't want to be a jackass, so I didn't drink. And of course, she didn't drink because, well, she didn't like jackasses either. My dad didn't drink. So anyway, this is in my genes. So I have to be really careful. I have to stay away from alcohol. If I start drinking, I might become addicted to alcohol. It's possible. Okay, you guys are susceptible to diabetes. So you need to stay away from fats and sugars. It has to do with lifestyles. Now, if you do the wrong thing, if you do the wrong thing and snort cocaine like Michael J. Fox and Ozzy Osbourne and Linda Ronstadt, then you might have a stroke, or you might have heart disease, or you might have Parkinson's disease, or you might develop cancer. So a lot of these young celebrities are dying relatively young because of the lifestyle that they lead, not because of the movies that they make. It doesn't have anything to do with the music. It has to do with what they're doing when they're not playing their music. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Some of them develop prostate cancer. Now, where in the world do they get where do you get prostate cancer? Why would a rock and roll guy have prostate cancer? What has he done in his life that makes him more susceptible to prostate cancer? 2 basic ways to get prostate cancer. One is to not have sex. Human body, we're just like animals, we're supposed to reproduce. That's the way it works. We're animals, and we're supposed to reproduce, just like dogs, cats, and cows, and civet cats are supposed to reproduce. So there's about, use it or lose it. In this case, the losing it part is where you don't use it, and then you get, the fluid builds up, it gets old in there, and you develop cancer. So there's two ways to get prostate cancer. One is not to use it, and the other one is to use it with the wrong people. If they have venereal, what we used to call venereal, sexually transmitted infections, now you got a problem. So if you develop gonorrhea, you're more likely to have a blockage in there. And if you have a blockage, of course, something backs up and all of a sudden, when you get to be into your 40s, you can't pee anymore because you got a blockage going on, and now you got prostate cancer. And so people die of prostate cancer because they had sex with the wrong person and contracted sexually transmitted infections. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll. So your lifestyle can dictate what you're going to die from, which is kind of fun if you think about it. So if you smoke a lot of cigarettes, guess what you're going to die from? Lung cancer. As much fun as that is, or a stroke. Tobacco, as it turns out, nicotine is not just a vasoconstrictor, it also makes your platelets sticky, makes them sticky, which means you're more likely to form a blood clot. And if you form a blood clot and it gets into your brain, you're dead, or you got a stroke. So depending on what you do to have a good time will dictate how you're going to die. How's that? You'll develop a cancer. You'll develop Parkinson's disease. You'll have a stroke. You'll die of prostate cancer. Okay. One of the other things that health psychologists look at is rising healthcare costs. And the other thing is rethinking the biomedical model. Medicine developed looking at the biomedical model. The biomedical model has to do with bacteria, it causes a disease, the person gets sick, we treat them with medication, and now they're healthy. What does it have to do with the way you think or the way that you feel? It has nothing to do with it. So what we as health psychologists do, we try to rethink the biomedical model. We try to help the doctors out. And of course the doctors are smarter than we are, so we can't argue with them, because they're so damn smart. Remember that IQ we were talking about? Anyway, social perspective recognizes that biological, psychological, and sociocultural forces act together to determine an individual's health vulnerability to disease. That's what I've been talking about. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll lead to early death, and as well as far as that's concerned. Why are the Rolling Stones still alive? Well, the answer is half of them are dead. Why are the Beatles still alive? Well, the answer is half of them are already dead, right? There were four of them. Paul, John, Ringo, and John. John was shot and killed in New York City. George died of cancer. So Paul and Ringo were the only two that are still alive. I don't know about the Rolling Stones. I think they started out with 5. And then the drummer committed suicide. Well, anyway, half of them are gone. And they replaced them with other people. So the sociocultural forces that you are in, they dictate who how you're going to die and how you're going to live. I was living up in Montana on the Fort Belknap Reservation. I was living in a small town called Chinook. Chinook started out, marijuana hasn't been really popular for very long. Only since I was a kid. Before that, hardly anybody smoked pot. But during my adolescence, marijuana became more popular. So the people that were my age in Chinook, Montana, they were the first ones to ever smoke marijuana because nobody smoked it before that. It wasn't very popular. It wasn't around there. You know, where are you going to get it? Where do you get marijuana in 1960? You have to know somebody that uses it. That's, it was coming down from Canada. It's right on the Canadian border. Anyway, there were 5 guys that were cool, and they were the ones that first started smoking marijuana. Well, today, if you go to Chinook, Montana, there's only 2 of them left, and one of them is in a walker. He's got an oxygen tank hanging off him. The other guy is okay. He's a swimmer, but he exercises. The other 3 died of cancer. Well, one died in an automobile accident. 2 of them died of cancers. Did it have anything to do with marijuana? I don't know. But they're dead, you know? So a lot of this has to do with lifestyle. It has to do with sociocultural forces. If you went to high school and everybody in your high school class, the cool people anyway, were smokers and tokers and drinkers, then potentially that's what you think you're supposed to do. And that's the sociocultural portion of it. Then you went away to college, realized that those guys were all idiots, and then you change your sociocultural structure. That's the way it works. Health and disease must be explained in multiple contexts. You can't just, and if, of course, if we ask doctors about it, they just talk about the biological aspect. They don't even think about the psychological aspect or the sociocultural aspect. Why are we doing it? Why do we do these things? For a while, Miley Cyrus was talking about MDMA, wasn't she? I think she was, Miley Cyrus. So she was, I don't know. The last thing I remember about Miley Cyrus is her rocking back and forth on that crash ball, that's it. That's all I know. She was Hannah Montana, and then all of a sudden, she strips off all of her clothes and jumps on a wrecking ball and goes swinging back and forth with the ugliest boots I've ever seen. Weren't her boots the ugliest things? Why would you, if you're naked, why in the world would you put on a pair of boots that look like that? Just a thought. You need to look at the video. It's called Wrecking Ball, I think, if I'm not mistaken. All behaviors as well as health and illness occur in a biological context. The coronavirus, we had to figure out the biological aspect of it. Now we can figure out the psychological aspect of it and the sociocultural aspect of it. We don't really have to worry about it mutating in the United States because we don't live with civet cats. Those lovely animals, they are kind of cute. Yeah, not bad anyway. We don't live with civet cats, so it's not going to mutate in the United States. But they do. And it may mutate again, and it may form some form of pneumonia. So we may have a problem. Health psychology draws attention to those aspects of our bodies that influence health and disease, our genetic makeup, our nervous system, our immune systems, and our endocrine system. As I told you last time, I think I told you last time, I told you about my spleen. I don't have a spleen, I'm spleenless. And the reason I don't have a spleen is because I was playing in a soccer game in 1985, and I got hit in the chest, and the guy ruptured my spleen. Then they took it out, and I don't have one. And your immune system is a major part of the spleen is a major part of your immune system. And I don't have that part. It's gone. It's missing. I am spleenless. So this has to do with my immune system. Those of you who are female, you guys have 3 parts to your immune system. Kevin and I, just 2. I don't know. It's not fair. You got estrogen. Damn it, and progesterone, and by golly, that stuff just protects you guys all over the place. Why? Because we're not worth nothing. Kevin and I are throwaway people. You guys represent babies, so when you evolved to have all of this protection, and the estrogen protects you from heart disease, it protects you from kidney disease, it protects you from your immune system is stronger than mine is. It's just, you're just lucky. Yeah, right, okay. We'll call it luck. Anyway, that's your immune system. The other is your endocrine system. This has to do with how your body processes hormones and whatnot. This has to do with diabetes, your endocrine system. Your endocrine system and my endocrine system are not the same. I can eat all the sugar in the world and not have to worry about diabetes. Genetically, I don't have it in my family, so I don't have to worry about it, but you guys do, because you evolved eating different foods than my ancestors did. They ate different foods. In Europe, of course, they killed off all the animals a long time ago. The only people that got meat were people that were from the royal families. They were the only ones that got meat. Of course, we got meat on Christmas, so there you go. That's when you eat the turkey. Of course, there wasn't any turkey because it's Europe and turkeys come from here. But we didn't evolve eating meat, we evolved eating vegetables and whatnot, and grains. We didn't have hardly any meat. You guys evolved eating meat primarily, and vegetables as a secondary food to consume. So we evolved differently. So your endocrine system and my endocrine system are probably different. I can live off of vegetables, and it's really hard for you guys to do that. And you crave meat, you crave fat, unfortunately. And strangely enough, the meats that you used to eat didn't have very much fat in them. But then we brought cows over here, and I don't know if you've ever watched cows eating. They don't ever, sometimes they'll walk a little bit. That's about all the exercise they get. Lots of fat in their meat. Buffalo, if you've ever watched them, the buffalo herds, they move. They're always moving. They're always grazing and moving. And so you guys used to eat buffalo and antelope and whatnot. And though that meat is lean, and so you never ate the fatty meats that we have today. You didn't have pigs. You didn't have pork. I don't know if you've ever watched pork, but they don't exercise very much. So here, Western people came over here and gave you different food to eat, and it made you sick. It still does to this day. The tendency to abuse alcohol is known to run in families, and it runs in my family, I will admit it. Alcohol dependence is known to be partially genetic, though there is no single gene that controls the desire for alcohol. I do not desire alcohol, I don't like the taste of it. I've had a couple beers in my time. I've been drunk 3 times, but I didn't become an alcoholic. But I have alcoholics in my family that died young, as weird as that is. But we seem to have defeated it, because nobody in my family is an alcoholic right now. I can't think of anybody who's an alcoholic. But if you look back in my ancestry, I've got alcoholics all over the place. If you watch old movies, or there's a television show on Sunday night on PBS, Sanditon, that was written by Jane Austen. And it was written about the aristocracy of England at the beginning of the 19th century. You got to watch these guys putting down the booze. I'm telling you, they were just chug-a-lugging all the time. They didn't drink water. Well, why in the world wouldn't you drink water? Because it's a Europe, and they poop in the rivers, and you can't drink you never know what's going to be floating by if you're getting a glass of water out of the creek. You never know what's floating on the surface of the creek. Oh, I'm sad. Some people may inherit a greater sensitivity to the pleasurable experiences of intoxication and find the hangover minor. These people may be more likely to drink. I had a student who was Romanian. She was a second-generation Romanian. If you know anything about Eastern Europeans, they drink a lot of hard liquor, a lot of vodka, a lot of really strong alcohol. So her ancestors had evolved drinking a lot of alcohol. She could not get drunk. This lady could put everybody out under the table. She was amazing. And I told her, and she bragged about it, of course, and she'd say, I went to the bar last night, and this guy, he wanted to get me drunk, so we sat there, and he passed out. We drank until he passed out. Then another guy came up trying to get me drunk, and I drank him under the table too. And so she's bragging about all this alcohol she's consuming and not getting drunk. She has no negative effects to the alcohol that she's consuming. And I told her, yes, you are. You're not getting drunk. Drunk is not the only effect that you can have from the alcohol. It's still affecting your liver. It's still potentially affecting your kidneys. Since you're not getting anything out of it, why do it? Just stop. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, you drink to be happy, right? Or whatever. I don't know why people drink. To forget. She doesn't forget. It doesn't affect her mind. She doesn't have a hangover. But I told her, you got to be careful. I know, she's Romanian. Interesting, just fascinating, the way her mind works. a little bit different. The complete set of genetic instructions that make a living organism is called a genome. At the beginning of the class, I was talking about that they have isolated the Neanderthal genome, and some people have, or everybody in this room has Neanderthal ancestry, because they were the first people out of Africa. Well, they were really the first people out of Africa. But anybody that doesn't live in sub-Saharan Africa today has ancestry that is Neanderthal. So if we drew your blood, everybody's blood in here, and we checked your DNA, we would find Neanderthal ancestry. Some of us would have more Neanderthal ancestry than others. Probably I have more than you do because I'm a European, and that's primarily where they were. They were in the Middle East and they were in Europe. So probably I have a little bit more than you guys do, but you still have Neanderthal ancestry. Anyway, how do we know that? We looked at the genome, and we've looked at genomes all over the world of different individuals. We've always found Neanderthal ancestry. There have been rapid advances in genomic points to increase scientific knowledge, supporting the benefits of using genetic tests and family history to improve health. Now we are able to correct genetic flaws that people have. The one that we know about is sickle cell anemia. Sickle cell anemia is a transfer of 2 genes. Just 2 single genes. That's it. And if we can reverse that, then we can cure, literally cure, sickle cell anemia, and that we've done it. So we can actually change things so that you don't have the problems that you had before. Sickle cell anemia is simple. Alcoholism isn't. Alcoholism is a number of different genes that we would have to identify. Most important traits are epigenetic. In other words, if you live in the desert, you turn out one way. If you live in the cold environment up in Montana, you would become a totally different person. It's epigenetic. Things are triggered. The genes are triggered by the environment. The environment tells you how you're supposed to be. Once upon a time, the Japanese decided that they were going to take over the world. But they knew that in order for them to take over the world, they would have to, Japan is way up north, kind of. And they knew that they were going to have to take over the tropical islands in the South Pacific in order to conquer the world. So they did experiments trying to figure out how to make all these people from the cold environment of northern Japan, how they were going to be able to survive in the tropics. So they looked at all of these things. And what they discovered was, if you're born there and you're raised there, that's who you're going to be. They had fewer sweat glands up north. And if they went down south, they didn't need the sweat glands in the north when they were raised in the north. So if they went to the tropical area, they lost a lot of fluid because their sweat glands would suddenly start bursting with all this liquid. Now you guys live here in the desert, so potentially you sweat a lot less than people up north would sweat if they were down here, because they were raised in a different environment, despite the fact that everybody's indigenous. Okay, I was raised in the north. I was raised in Indiana, and in the north, of course, it's cold. And so if I went running in 100-degree weather in Arizona, I would lose a lot of fluid, 5-6 pounds, literally. And I've done it. And it's dumb because it's stupid. I could kill myself. And it's just not very smart. So what the Japanese discovered was that they couldn't change somebody's ancestry. They couldn't change who they were. If they were raised in the north, there's nothing they could do about it. Some factors will improve our health: nourishing food and safe places to grow up or education. Some factors will compromise our health, such as environmental toxins. Are you guys around environmental toxins? Am I around environmental toxins? Are there any toxins around here?
Water from the mines?
From the mines? You mean those uranium mines? Uranium's not good for you? You can't eat that stuff? No. Yeah, you're right. Uranium is the environmental toxin you have here. Poverty, because you don't eat enough nutritious food. The food that you do eat, you do get enough food, but the food that you do eat is not nutritious. Child abuse, of course, can cause a lot of problems, can cause psychological problems when you get later on in life if you don't deal with it. Can you make it go away, child abuse? Can you survive child abuse, or does it stay with you all your life? Can you survive it? Let's vote. How many people think you can survive child abuse? Nobody? Oh, man. So it will always be with you? It'll destroy you? It'll always be a part of your life? No, you can, yeah. That's our job. Our job is to help you if you have a problem from your past. We can help you get over it. Child abuse. There are select regions on the DNA that are genes promoted that regulate the expression of a select gene, and this is known as epigenetics. So if you were abused as a child, and one of the things we discovered from looking at soldiers coming out of Vietnam, one of the things we discovered was if they were abused as children, their PTSD was worse. If they weren't abused as children, they were less likely to develop PTSD. So what had happened, those genes, and especially in their brain, their reaction to negative situations would be triggered, and so their brains would develop in a select way. Once they went through combat, or once they went through the traumatic, they went through war, they would develop a worse PTSD, and it was harder to treat. So the problem was, we had all these guys going over to Vietnam. They had like 8 million men went to Vietnam. And when they came back, some of them had PTSD and some of them didn't. Well, the ones that didn't have PTSD are going, what the hell's wrong with you? I don't have PTSD. You know, I went through more combat than you did, and it doesn't bother me, you know, that kind of thing. So there were individuals who went through very little combat, but yet they developed this god-awful PTSD, and other individuals who went through horrible, horrible combat and didn't develop PTSD at all. We saw the same thing in World War II. And what we realized eventually, when we started thinking about it, what we realized was the individuals who had been abused as children were the ones that developed PTSD the worst. And they were the ones, and no matter what their combat experience was, it was still pretty bad. And we needed to deal with it. But, you know, we're the United States of America. We hate to spend money on anything if we don't have to. So even if we can see it, and even if you show it to us, we're not going to admit it until somebody sues our butts off. That's what happened. We had all those guys coming back from Vietnam. The war ended in 1975, and it wasn't until the 1980s that we admitted that PTSD existed. Same thing with Agent Orange. We had this stuff that we sprayed. It was an anti-plant substance, and we sprayed it all over Vietnam, and so we contaminated all these guys with Agent Orange, and it changed their DNA. It changed all kinds of stuff. My brother came back with welts all over his back, and he had to have these things cut out. They were, you know, with a spoon. He had 100 of them on his back. He was lucky because some people, it affected their brains, it affected their DNA. I mean, just horrible, horrible stuff. Why am I talking about this? I can't remember. I forgot why I was talking about it. Oh, this is the whole Japanese thing. Japan's kind of an interesting place. This part of Japan is right here. So the top part, this is where I was. I was stationed over right here in Misawa, over by Hachinohe. Anyway, we were way up north, and it snowed. We had 100 inches of snow before January when I was in Japan. We also had earthquakes every day. It was just the most bizarre thing in the world. Tokyo would be right here. Tokyo is right along this line right here. That's northern Colorado, southern Nebraska. southern Iowa, northern Illinois. That's where Tokyo is. So as you can see, it's a relatively northern country. So their weather is kind of cold. The only portion of Japan that's relatively warm is right here, and that would be where you guys are, around Phoenix. Anyway, okay. So it's really pretty cold up there. So most of the Japanese live in areas that are really cold. It's relatively cold in the wintertime. They get a lot of snow. Well, we did anyway. And that they were trying to conquer the tropical area of the South Pacific, and they realized that there was nothing they could do. You can't change somebody who lives in Alaska to somebody who can live in Phoenix. It just ain't going to happen. They're not going to be comfortable because they're going to sweat too much. It's just not going to work. DNA methylation is a biochemical process that occurs in cells that is essential to the healthy functioning of most body systems. Methylation helps regulate the expression of genes that repair your DNA, that control inflammation, that promote healthy blood vessels. So in order for you to be healthy, methylation has to take place. It takes care of your DNA, it controls the inflammation in your body, and it promotes healthy blood vessels that allow your blood to circulate. Why do I have Arnold Schwarzenegger? Arnold Schwarzenegger. Breakdown in methylation promotes the development of cancers, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and accelerated aging. So what are you doing when you're snorting cocaine? What are you doing when you're shooting or you're smoking meth? What you're doing is you're accelerating your life, is what you're doing. You're changing your DNA. That's one of the reasons why sex, drugs, and rock and roll, probably not the best idea if you want to live past your 50s or 60s, because you're going to come down with someone. You're just changing too much. And that's one of the things that happen. And this is, of course, Arnold Schwarzenegger used steroids, but he's an old man now. He's older than I am, actually. Of course, I never looked like this, but I don't look like that. Thank God. Methylation changes as we age and can be influenced by your diet, by tobacco use, by exposure to environmental toxins. So it may be one of the reasons why Navajos don't live as long as other people. So if we looked at Apache County or Navajo County, and we found out how long different groups of individuals live, one of the things we might find out is that Navajos don't live as long as people who aren't Navajo, non-native people. Up in Montana, Blaine County is where Fort Belknap is. My wife worked in a clinic in Blaine County, and so she got all the MMWR stuff. That's not right. Anyway, she got all the statistics from the federal government, and they talk about life expectancies of different groups. Of course, there's only primarily two groups in the whole county. There's natives and there's non-natives. So if you looked at the non-natives, they lived to be 80. Their life expectancy was 80, and if you looked at natives, their life expectancy was 60. And of course, so what's the difference? Everybody's eating the same food, it's the same environment, what's going on? Well, the diet wasn't the same, because they were getting commodities, and so their food wasn't the same as the non-natives. Non-natives didn't get commodities because they had to buy their own damn food. More tobacco use on the reservation, and of course, the natives, there was a gold mine that was at the southern end of the reservation, and it leached arsenic into the water supply. So now we got another problem. Anyway, and they also drank a little bit more alcohol, and they had more automobile accidents, kids did, and they died young. So it lowered their life expectancy quite a bit. Life course perspective focuses on important age-related aspects of health and illness. 2/3 of all deaths in the United States were caused by these 5 diseases. Heart disease is number 1. Cancer is number 2. Chronic lower respiratory disease is number 3. That's pneumonia. It's not a cold. It's not the flu. That's an upper respiratory disease. This is lower respiratory disease. Lungs fill up with water and you die. Once upon a time, and it wasn't that long ago before we had lots of broad spectrum antibiotics to treat people with, everybody died of pneumonia. So you get sick and then they'd put you in the hospital, you lay in the bed until you develop pneumonia, and then you die. That's the way it worked. Because if you don't move around and move that fluid out of your lungs, you've got a problem. Now you've got pneumonia. So that's what people died from. Number 4 is stroke, and number 5 is accidents. This is what most people, 2/3 of the people in the United States die of these 5 diseases. And heart disease is number 1. Has to do with tobacco, unfortunately. Potentially has to do with alcohol as well. Causes cancer. The psychological context, health psychology supports the idea that health and illness are subject to psychological influences. The way that we appraise a situation can dictate our reaction to it. Events that are appraised as overwhelming, pervasive, or beyond our control will take a greater toll on us, both physically and psychologically. I had a heart attack in 2010. Why did I have a heart attack? I had a heart attack because I was fired. I'd never been fired before, and I was really doing a pretty damn good job. And it just didn't make a whole lot of sense that they fired me. And it really hurt my feelings. Now, unfortunately, it hurt my feelings. And because it hurt my feelings, I had a heart attack. It changed my psychological makeup. I'm usually a really, really happy guy, pretty much. I can handle just about anything, but not being fired. Obviously not being fired. And I was up north, and I was teaching on the Indian reservation, and they're the ones that fired me, and it really hurt my feelings. Hurt my feelings for a bunch of different reasons. One of them was I was more of a member of the community than the people that fired me. They were native as well, but they didn't interact with the community like I did. I went to powwows, I was on powwow committees, I was interacting with everybody. People liked me, except for the administration at the college. And it hurt my feelings, so I had a heart attack. I didn't die, obviously I didn't die, I'm here. But it changed me psychologically when I got fired. I'd never been through anything like that before. I'd been shot at, I'd been stabbed. That didn't bother me nearly as much as being fired by those people. And I had a heart attack. Shoot me, stab me, but don't fire me. How's that? And I had become part of the community, and that was the part that bothered me the most. And nobody could believe it when they fired me, because I was the psychology department, and nobody could believe it. Everybody was upset. People in the community. For one thing, I wasn't there to flip hamburgers at the powwows anymore. So who was going to do it? Some research indicates that whether a stressful event is actually experienced or merely imagined, the body's stress response is nearly the same. So it doesn't matter if you think that you're going to get enough and it really bothers you, then you're going to have the same stress level as if you do actually get enough. If it bothers you that much. So all you need to do is imagine it. Now remember, I told you about the guys coming out of Vietnam, and the ones with less combat experience still had the same levels of PTSD. Why? Because they were in danger as well. They weren't directly being shot at, but they were still in danger. And they imagined that potentially something bad could happen. And that was as bad as actually experiencing something bad happening. Actually, something bad happening might have been less traumatic, because thinking about it is sometimes worse than actually experiencing it. If you experience it, you go, oh, I survived. Well, this isn't bad at all. Now I feel happy because I was just attacked by, the Viet Cong. Depression may be partially due to replaying stressful events over and over in your mind until the stress becomes oppressive. And this is a really serious problem. The fact that we think about things and we think about things and we ruminate about them, and that's when we get depressed. So what we need to do is not think about them. But can you do that? We obsess about things. They get stuck in our brains. And now it's in that loop and we can't get it out. And that causes stress. Positive psychology teaches the concept of subjective well-being, focusing on our feelings of happiness and a sense of satisfaction with life. This is not the idea that you ignore stress and negative things, but that you reflect on the positive in any situation. And this is what I try to teach. I try to teach positive psychology. I don't want you to forget about the bad things. I just want you to accentuate the positive, not eliminate the negative, but just accentuate the positive. Just think about all the happy things that happen, or the pleasant things that happen. I have the ability, except when I got fired, of course, I have the ability to not think about the crappy things that have happened to me. I've been divorced twice. I've been stabbed by somebody that said that she would love me forever. Twice. I was stabbed in the afternoon, she stabbed me in the arm, and at night she stabbed me in the chest. And this is a woman that said she loved me. Is that love? The knife part was really confusing to me. The stabbing, that didn't bother me so much. It was the knife that she used. It was a steak knife.
Then
Thank
you
God
went back
she's...
to her?
I'm sorry?
Then you went back to her again?
No, she left then. She left me. I didn't leave her. She left me. Eventually she came back. You're right, I let her come back. I'll explain it to Kevin later. Has to do with sex. Attitude in any medical situation will have an impact on the outcome of the situation. A patient who feels that they will have pain from a surgery or side effects from a drug are more likely to interpret minor problems as a precursor to all their fears. And then, of course, they do develop the pain that they were thinking about. The tension will make the negative outcome more likely to happen. If you've ever been in an athletic situation where you injure yourself, it just won't go away, and it won't go away, and it won't go away. Sometimes it's the fact that you're tightening your muscles because it hurts. And if you can relax those muscles, the pain will go away. You sprain your ankle, and now this ankle won't heal. What the hell's going on? Why won't that ankle heal? Well, the problem is you're tightening everything up. You've changed the way that you walk, and now, of course, your ankle isn't healing very rapidly. So take a muscle relaxer, or make the pain go away in one way or another, and sometimes the pain will go away forever. I know, it's a miracle. It's a Christmas miracle. Anyway, tension. Tension causes as much trouble as anything else. Psychological interventions can help patients learn to manage their tension. Patients who are more relaxed are better able to follow their doctor's instructions. Negative life events have been linked to decreased immune functioning and thus increased susceptibility to illness. I told you about my sister. She married a guy that decided he wanted to be a girl. Did I tell you about that? And my sister developed cancer, heart disease, and then she developed cancer. Just because she was depressed. Negative things had happened to her. The most negative things she could possibly imagine. But you know what was the worst thing that happened to her? It wasn't the fact that her husband decided he wanted to be her sister. That wasn't the bad thing. The worst thing was that she'd been preaching to her brothers, all four of us, that there was something wrong with us because we were so macho, we made too much noise, we were too violent. She'd been telling us this forever. She was embarrassed. I think she died of embarrassment. She developed all of these problems. She got depressed because she was wrong. She found the perfect man who turned out not to want to be a man. And it embarrassed her. And she may have died of embarrassment, as stupid as that sounds. I just thought about that. we did all kinds of things trying to heal that lady. She went to England, she walked up the Spiral Mountain. And that, if you go to the top, you pray to the gods and they'll cure you. We had a sweat for her. We tied her material, you sweat with material, and then you take it out and you tie it on a branch, pointing in a specific direction. It heals you, and it didn't work. Anyway, well, she lived a little bit longer, and it gave her more positive feelings, but it was the fact that she was embarrassed. She was embarrassed that she was wrong. She was always right. She knew everything. She read everything, so she was smarter than the rest of us. Social contexts are the ways that we think about, influence, and relate to one another and the environment. We are influenced by our birth cohort, the group of people who, because they were born at about the same time, experienced similar historical and social conditions. This is really, really, really important until you get to be about 50 or 60 years old. And then people start dying off. And then you find friends who are younger than you are. But when you're 20, 30, and 40, almost all your friends are your cohorts. They are the people that you grew up with. They are the people that are in the same age group as you are. But then you get so old that everybody dies. I think my mother died at 98. She was 98 years old, but she was the last one that was left. I think that's why she died. She didn't have anybody to talk to, except me. She hated me most of my life. The reason she didn't like me was because I was so much like her. So when we would talk to each other, we talked to each other as if I was, just like her. And she didn't like that because she thought she was a jack. She didn't like the way that I don't know. She thought she was a little bit too pushy. So I was a little bit too pushy too. Anyway, so we are like the people that we grow up with. These are our cohorts. When my dad was 70, almost everybody from World War II is gone. They all died of lung cancer because they smoked too many cigarettes, so they're all dead. So by the time he reached 70, he didn't have anybody to talk to anymore. Nobody was still alive that was in World War II. They were just, every once in a while you found somebody from World War II. While he was in his 30s and 40s, he could go to the AMVETS, or he could go to the American Legion, he could go to VFW, and he could talk to these guys about what he experienced in the war. But all those guys were now dead, so he didn't have anybody to talk to, which was kind of sad. He told me about his experiences in Germany. He was in World War II in Germany. When I shipped out for Germany, he told me about what happened to him in Germany. Isn't that really strange? And he never talked to his kids about this kind of stuff until, of course, I was headed in the same place, to the same place. It wasn't anything like what he said it was going to be. When he went to Germany, the place was all blown to hell. I mean, it was all blown up. But when I was there, they had already repaired almost everything. Sociocultural perspective is a theoretical perspective that focuses on how social and cultural factors contribute to health and disease. Culture is the enduring behaviors, values, and customs that a group of people transmit from one generation to the next. Your culture is very strong. That's why you're here at Diné College. That's why you're not at ASU. If you were at ASU, would they teach you your culture? Or would they teach you white culture? Because most of the people there are white. Is there any place you can go in the United States and learn Hispanic culture? I don't know what school that is. The first school where I taught college was a black college. I was the only white faculty member. That was a little strange. That was different. Most of your professors are probably non-native, right? They're almost all white people. What do we know about your culture? Not very much. I don't know. I got a ring. See, it's got turquoise on it. Okay. My wife, I gave this to my wife, and she put it on, and she said, "It's way too big. Must be for you." So I think I'm engaged to my wife now. but I'm not sure. I'll find out the next time I go home. Ethnic group is a large group of people who tend to have similar values and experiences because they share certain characteristics. Your ethnic group would be American Indians. Your culture is, of course, Diné, but your ethnic group is American Indians. So that includes all those Hopis and all those Apaches and all those Mojaves and all those, who else is out there? Lagunas, there's not that many Lagunas, what am I talking about? All those Sioux, Lakota, Nakota, Dakota, all the Algonquian speaking people. Let's go to Oklahoma and find the Cherokee, largest tribe in the United States. You guys ain't the largest tribe. Cherokee are the largest tribe. Of course, most of them look like me. Yeah. How did that happen? So that's on tape. Socioeconomic status is a measure of several variables, including income, education, and occupation. So your ethnic group is American Indian. It's not Diné. Diné is your culture. Your ethnic group is American Indian. Gender perspective is a theoretical perspective that focuses on gender-specific health problems and barriers to health care. One problem that women have faced in the past is unrepresentation of women as participants in medical research trials. The beginning, of course, when they did research, they did it on men. They didn't do it on women. So it's one of the reasons why when women started dying of en masse of breast cancer, why in the world did they start dying of breast cancer? This is in the 70s and 80s. Why? What happened? Something must have happened. What could possibly have happened to make women die of breast cancer? What could it possibly be? Were breasts suddenly larger? Were they smaller? Why were they more sensitive all of a sudden in the 1970s and 1980s? What happened? Women started dying of breast cancer en masse. Lots and lots of women were dying of breast cancer. What was going on? What had changed? What could it possibly have been? It had to have been something. Were they embarrassed because there's more pornography out there? Maybe, was that it? That's silly. That doesn't make any sense. That couldn't possibly be it. It had to be something else. What happened? Well, for one thing, women were living longer. Remember, when I was born, my life expectancy was 56. And if I had been a female, it would have been 59. But now it's almost 80 for females. So you guys are living a lot longer. The other thing that happened was that women really didn't start smoking cigarettes until the 1920s. Before that, a woman smoking in public was not supposed to happen. Women were just not supposed to smoke in public. They also started drinking more. Alcohol has something to do with breast tissue. But it was especially the tobacco. And women were living longer. They were dying in their 50s. They were dying in childbirth. And of course, that wasn't happening nearly as much anymore. So women were living longer. Their lifestyle had changed. They were smoking too much. They were drinking more than they had before. And all of these led to breast cancer. All of these things. But still, men were almost all the research was being done on men. Why men? I don't know. They had all the money, I guess. Men were dying of lung cancer, and they were dying of prostate cancer yet. And the reason they weren't dying of prostate cancer was because there wasn't that much gonorrhea. Gonorrhea is a really big problem for guys. It scars the reproductive canal. And if it does that, then that stuff that you're supposed to get out of there from time to time it was getting stuck in there. And that's what causes prostate cancer. Your reproductive organs are very, very sensitive tissue. So the cervix is extremely sensitive, The uterus is extremely sensitive. The fallopian tubes, the breast tissue are all very sensitive tissue for females. For males, they've got all kinds of crap in there that create semen for them. And all of these things are very, very sensitive. This is all very sensitive tissue. Women are more likely to have reproductive system problems than men. Women are more likely to be undernourished than men are. Why in the world, why don't we feed women better? What's the problem? Why are they so undernourished? What's wrong with women? Do men get the first dibs on all the food? Is that what's going on? Or are you starving yourself to death so that you look better? Is that what's going on? Sure. If a man wants to look better, what does he do? Well, sometimes he loses weight, but usually he just goes to the gym and lifts weights. So he's getting bigger. He wants to get bigger to look better. Women, if they want to look better, do they try to put on a few pounds? No, you try to get as skinny as you possibly, slender, I'm sorry, did I say skinny? I meant slender. You try to get as slender as you possibly can. Other than those two problems, men are more vulnerable to nearly every other health problem. By age 80, women outnumber men 2 to 1. You live longer than men, but then you get a free ride for your first 40 or 50 years because you've got estrogen, damn it. You've got estrogen that protects you from like anything. So you can smoke all you want till you're 50 years old. After 50, then everything is almost the same as men. So all bets are off. But by this time, men have already screwed themselves to the extent that they die of cancer, and they die of heart disease, and they die of lung cancer, they die of all kinds of stupid things because men are pretty damn stupid. No offense. So if you want to live a long time, be an athlete, don't smoke, don't drink. Yeah, that's enough. And don't have sex with the wrong women. How's that? Okay. So how do you figure out which ones they are? I don't know. I haven't figured that one out either. And I know a lot of men that didn't figure it out either. That was my job when I was in the service, was checking people for gonorrhea. Most fun I've ever had. Men are more likely to make unhealthy food choices. They're dumb as dirt. To be overweight, they get that spare tire around their guts. They exceed guidelines for alcohol consumption and engage in binge drinking. Men are just stupid. They drink too much. They ignore illness symptoms and avoid seeing a doctor. Their arm is falling off. I'll go next week, that kind of stupid stuff. Men are just not real smart, especially when it comes to doctors. For some reason, men don't want to admit that they have a problem. Engage in risky competitive sports where there is a high rate of injury. Who the hell came up with the X Games? My God, those people, they'll all die young. My goodness, they do flips and they're, I don't know, it's stupid. And are there any women doing it? No, women aren't that dumb. It's only guys doing it. Be at greater risk for nearly all the major diseases that affect both sexes. More lung cancer, more stomach cancer, certainly prostate cancer. More heart disease, more strokes. Men are more likely to die from all of those diseases than women are. But women rarely have these problems before they go through menopause. Although low socioeconomic status usually predicts poor health, this is not true for Hispanics. I told you last time I wanted to be a Hispanic female when I grew up. If I ever grow up, I want to be a Hispanic female, and it's because they live longer than any other ethnic group in the United States. They live longer than white people. They live longer than Asians. They live longer certainly than American Indians. They have lower rates of heart disease, cancer, and stroke. However, after 2 generations, Hispanics are just as likely to have typical American problems: obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and cancer. When they come up, when they first immigrate to the United States, they've got 2 generations, and then by the 3rd generation, they're just like white people. Just as messed up as white people are. I know, it's kind of tragic. So I want to be a Hispanic lady that has just immigrated to the United States. Okay. I know, this is getting more specific all the time. What do health psychologists do? Health psychologists are teachers, research scientists, and clinicians. Positive psychology is a new focus on optimal, healthy human functioning. Clinical health psychologists are licensed practitioners who focus on health-promoting interventions. Where do health psychologists work? Most of them work in independent practice, as you can see, 46%. 12% work in hospitals, 22% work in education. Can you ever become rich by being a health psychologist? Nah. Nah, you're gonna probably make about the same amount that I'm making right now. How do I become a health psychologist? Or how do you become a health psychologist? General psychology training at the undergraduate level, so just take this class and then whatever else. Special training at the doctoral level, the PhD level. It's a 4 to 6 year program. ASU has a program in health psychology. Colorado State has one. Who else? Michigan State has one of the best in the country. Usually most of this stuff, all this new stuff, it's in the middle of the country. It's not on the East Coast. Sometimes it's on the West Coast. But East Coast, they're so traditional over there. They probably don't even know what health psychology is. If you were at Harvard, you wouldn't take this class. It doesn't exist there. Curriculum follows the psychosocial model, internship in hospitals, clinic, or other medical settings. And that is the end of the chapter. As fun as that is. Let's start chapter 2, why not? If I offend anyone, please tell me and I'll temper my statements. I figure, what the hell? You want the Disney version or you want the real version? You know, what do you want? If you want the Disney version, forget it. I don't know the Disney version. We need to be realistic anyway. That's 3, I think that's 2. That's 4. My goodness, I can't see. 2. This program was set up as a research program because that's what Sarah wanted to do. I've been reading into this. Yeah, research is real important. If you want to go to graduate school, the more research you do at the undergraduate level, the better off you're going to be. The easier it's going to be for you to get into whatever program you want to get into. So research is not a bad idea. In 2002, there was a pitcher for the St. Louis Cardinals. His name was Darryl Kyle. He was the ace on their pitching staff. He died suddenly of a massive heart attack at age 33. He was in perfect condition. He was a baseball player. His thighs were a little bit too big, but most pitchers have big thighs, so they could push off, get more oomph behind the ball. People wondered if exercise was any protection from heart disease. People that are lazy are always trying to find an excuse not to do it. That's exercise, I mean. My sister that died, she was always telling me that the more muscles you had, the more fat you would have when you got older. So she didn't want to exercise because she didn't want to be fat when she was older. As stupid as that is. And I told her, you're wrong, and she kept saying, no, I'm right. She's kind of like Trump. He knows, his gut is smarter than most people's brains. My sister thought the same thing. So they were trying to find excuses not to exercise, and this guy died of a heart attack. This is in 2002. After weeks of speculation about drug abuse and even murder, you know how people are. They want somebody to be murdered rather than for any other reason. It was disclosed that Kyle had a family history of heart disease. His father died of a heart attack at 44. Kyle had a 90% blockage in 2 coronary arteries. Now, the interesting thing is that when I had my heart attack, I had 93% blockage in my major coronary artery. So why the hell am I not dead? Well, the reason is because I'm a weightlifter. If you lift weights, you pump a lot of blood through your system real fast at one juncture. And because I did that, my body was used to getting not very much blood for a relatively short period of time. But when I had my heart attack, I was able to survive because I'm a weightlifter. And I'm also a runner. If you're a pitcher, you're not a runner and you're not a weightlifter. As a matter of fact, they don't want you to lift weights because if you lift weights, it messes up your delivery. So they're not weightlifters and they're not runners. They rarely run. This is as much movement as they ever get. It's lunges is about it. So he wasn't a weightlifter and he wasn't a runner. I was, and I survived mine, and he didn't survive his. Of course, I had mine when I was 60, and he had his when he was 33. Okay, a little bit different. Americans were a routinely lazy bunch until the late 70s and early 80s when the jogging craze hit the country. It was nuts. Before 1970, nobody ran except track people and cross-country runners. They were the only people out there on the streets. There were no joggers. Nobody jogged. This was not something that anybody... We didn't even have any shoes to wear. Remember, it was Steve Prefontaine who, in Oregon, they were the ones that invented running shoes. Before that, there were, Adidas had some running shoes, Puma had some running shoes, but nobody else had any running shoes. At the forefront of the fighting sedentary lifestyle was Jim Fixx, who wrote 2 books extolling the benefits of running. This guy was a jogger, and he invented the jogging craze. He said you didn't have to run, you could just jog. All you need to do is get out there and move. And of course, you can see how skinny the guy is. There's a reason why he's so skinny. Then at age 43, Fixx dropped dead of a heart attack while jogging in Vermont. The world of running was shocked, and the sedentary people pointed to his death as proof that exercise couldn't and wouldn't help. So it was something that you didn't need to do. This is my sister pointing at me saying, you don't have to exercise, it'll just turn into fat. But then it was disclosed that Fixx had been a sedentary smoker before getting the running bug and had consumed a diet of high fat, high cholesterol, and it had blocked the arteries in his heart. Fixx was a workaholic who got a limited number of hours of sleep a night and had a father who died of a heart attack at 43, and that's why he was dead. It was genetics, didn't have anything to do with exercise. So, those of us who exercise, Kevin and I, we are the healthiest people in the whole wide world and we'll live forever. Maybe. Well, probably not. Maybe not forever. Okay.